Hey everybody, annyeonghaseyo. It's Sheena again. I actually wanted to move on to another topic instead of talking about more about teaching in Korea. I may revisit that topic later, but for now I actually wanted to talk a little bit about my adoption story, specifically for people out there that are thinking about adopting, specifically international and/or transracial adoption. Also to talk about different resources for Korean adoptees and their families that are thinking about traveling to Korea, either to just visit, maybe for the first time, just to visit in general, or also resources to help Korean adoptees that are thinking about going back to Korea for an extended time. So, talking a bit about my upbringing, I was born in Masan, Korea, in 1987. I was adopted to Maryland, outside Washington D.C. area. My family, my parents, were actually not able to have their own children. Obviously, like many other couples that end up adopting, they tried to have their own children, but weren't able to. So they adopted my brother, not biological, in 1985. He was born in Daegu, Korea. So they adopted him in 1985, and then they adopted me. Yay! So um, I had a pretty normal, quote unquote, normal childhood. Nothing too crazy or noteworthy for that. We lived in a suburb of Washington D.C. Fairly diverse area. I'm grateful for that, to have grown up in a diverse area. Went to public school. I My family moved to New England when I was a sophomore in high school, and then I graduated from that high school in New England. And then my family actually moved back to Maryland in 2005, and they're still living in Maryland. My brother is still living in Maryland as well, and I'm actually living in Washington State now since last December. And I love it out here. It's beautiful, Washington State. To talk about, let's see, talking about possible programs and resources for Korean adoptees. Um, Before my family moved back to Maryland in 2005, I wasn't really sure about college plans. I really didn't have a set plan as to what I wanted to major in. And a family friend who had actually been working in international adoption for many years said, "Hey, Sheena, here's a program for Korean adoptees to go back and be quote unquote immersed in Korean culture." And that program is the IIIHR program. Three I's stands for the NJ Institute for International Human Resources. It's sponsored by the program is actually at NJ University in Gimhae, South Korea. Gimhae is in southeastern Korea. It's a suburb of Busan. Busan is the second largest city in Korea. It's a 3-month program. The participants, Korean adoptee participants, you have to be 18 or over. Live at the university. Live in a dormitory called English Town. You'll be living with a Korean roommate. At least one other Korean roommate. I had two Korean roommates. Yeah, you have to be 18 or over to be in the program. It's a $600 fee, and on top of that fee, you have to pay for your ticket to and fro. So, the $600 fee covers food. Like you can go to the cafeteria there. I mean, it's Korean cafeteria food. It's okay. You probably don't want to eat there every day, but at least it pays for some meals if you choose to do that. It also covers obviously to live in the dorm. It also covers outings. As a group, we all went to Seoul for 1 week. We actually stayed at Koh-Root Hostel. I'll briefly talk about Koh-Root now. Koh-Root is pretty much a guest house in northern Seoul. Koh-Root, the house of Korean root. Yeah, it's a guest house there. It's a pretty low-cost place to stay there for Korean adoptees and their families that go back to Korea. They also host events. I know they've hosted screenings of films like Resilience, about Korean adoptees and Korean adoptee issues, etc. Yep, so that's Koh-Root. The website is www.koroot.org to find out more information about Koh-Root. Going back to the NJ program briefly, in exchange for your participation in the program, which will include Korean classes, Korean language classes, intro Korean classes, um, Korean movies, Korean culture, obviously, Korean traditional music. So in exchange for those classes, etc., you'll have to teach conversational English classes either to the students there at NJ or to people that live in the Gimhae area that call upon the university and say, hey, I want to, improve my English. And so you might be matched up with one or two, give or take, students, which is what I did. Let's see. Gimhae itself is, it was more globalized than I thought it would be. Quote unquote globalized. There were, Baskin Robbins, Pizza Hut, yeah, suburb. You'll have a lot of free time. People ask me, what did you do? What was it like? You'll have a lot of free time. It wasn't as structured, quote unquote, as I thought it would be. I mean, you have to attend the classes I mentioned before, but after that, after lunch, you're pretty much free to do whatever you want. So you have a lot of free time. Yeah, I'm definitely glad I did the program. I think the one main benefit that I took away from the program was being able to meet other Korean adoptees. I mean, I think that was obviously priceless. And most of us were from the United States, but there were two, one girl from Sweden and one from the Netherlands. And we were all like, oh, why couldn't we have been adopted to Europe? So it was pretty cool. Yeah, that was definitely very interesting to meet other Korean adoptees and Europeans, as I put it, the Korean Europeans. So it was neat. But yep, I mean, you will have a lot of free time, as I mentioned before, and depending on how much money you have or how much money you bring with you, I did not bring that much money. And depending on your Korean language ability, you can take that free time and travel around Korea if you want. I kind of wish, obviously, I had been able to have more money or more, better Korean language ability to have been able to feel more comfortable going to travel in more rural areas. But anyway, so that's a bit about the III HR program. Other resources for Korean adoptees and their families going back to Korea. In addition to code, I mentioned too is INKAS, INKAS. It stands for International Korean Adoptee Service Incorporated, and their mission is to provide services such as, they offer Korean language scholarships to attend for Korean adoptees to go back to Korea and attend Korean language classes at one of 7 that they sponsor universities in Seoul. Also to help Korean adoptees that are trying to meet their birth families. That process can be kind of convoluted, and depending on the particular adoptee and depending on their particular circumstance and when they were actually adopted, there's that too. Let's see what else. INKAS also. Another very important organization for Korean adoptees is GOAL. That is also a similar mission to help adoptees adjust or experience Korea to the fullest. They also help with birth family search and union. It's to get unite the Korean adoptees community, the Korean adoptees that do return to Korea, kind of give them a home base, so to speak. There is also it's a free volunteer tour group. It's called Meteor University Student Tour Guide Services in Seoul. The website is METEOR Youth YOUTH.org. It's a volunteer group that will help tour you around Seoul. So those are some of the resources that are available. Let's see. The GOAL website is www.goal.kr/eng. That's the GOAL website. I was also looking at the GOAL website earlier before the video, and I found it kind of interesting that Korean adoptees on the F4 visa can actually drive in Korea. I mean, if you want to drive in Korea. You can actually turn in your U.S. driver's license and then get the Korean license, and then you'll get your U.S. license back when you turn in the Korean one. So that's a little bit about that. To address my adoption story and talking about to address other adoptees that might be wanting to search for birth family, and also to address people that are thinking about adopting. Again, I will make my disclaimer here that this is my own experience, and all adoptees will experience their how they feel about their adoption in general, on a continuum. I mean, it's a never ending. This is corny, but sorry, journey, quote unquote, their adoption journey. You may get to one point in your life where you think you have most of your answers or most things solved, and then you realize, oh hey, there's more questions. So going back to my time in Korea, I went to the NJ program pretty much to immerse myself in Korean culture. I did not at that time in 2005 decide to pursue a birth family search. I mean, I think pretty much everyone, or the majority of the people in the group, decided to, when we were all in Seoul, to go ahead and at least visit their adoption agencies, to either find out more information in their file or to try and initiate search. So to touch on that, my decision to start my birth family search. It's been a couple years now, actually. I will try and not make it too long here. But actually, I initiated the search in order to, for other Korean adoptees thinking about it, you have to go through your U.S. or European, Australian, yada yada, your home adoption agency. You have to initiate through them. You can't actually contact your Korean adoption agency first. So your social worker at your home adoption agency will go ahead and contact the agency in Korea and say this adoptee is wanting to start the birth family search, either birth mother or birth family search. It definitely depends. Like I said, it depends on each adoptee, and I think my general impression is it's going to depend on when you were adopted. They say there've been about 200,000 children that have been adopted since Korean adoption started and after the Korean War. I guess I would say people that were born maybe in the 70s might have a little bit more difficulty. Again, this is just general impression of finding their birth family. I mean, either just because I get the general impression that records might not have been as kept up as well back then, or the system might have been a little bit more convoluted back then too. As I mentioned before, my brother, the not biological brother, was adopted in 85, and then I was adopted in 87. That was kind of the height, quote unquote, if you will, of families adopting children from Korea. So luckily, so it will depend on what year you were adopted, and just depending on your circumstance, how much information is available in your file. Also to know, it's unfortunate, but it happened that what is written or printed in your adoption file, may not be correct. It may be, may have intentionally been not correct information, or maybe by error it may be false information. So that can be heartbreaking, obviously, for adoptees that go back wanting to find something out, and then you find, oh hey, it's a dead end because it's false information. So I decided to start my birth family search several years ago, and I was actually, it was November, fall of 2008. My social worker at my home agency in Maryland called and said, hey, I have wonderful news in regards to your birth family search. And it was obviously overwhelming to find out, hey, your birth family was found, quote unquote. I mean, it's kind of funny, I say sarcastically, they were never lost, quote unquote, just, being sarcastic. But they were found. People asked me, how did you react, how did you feel? I definitely felt as though part of my, I guess a part of me, part of my heart, part of my soul that had maybe been a little bit of a hole, I guess. I definitely felt that closing. I felt like closing like that. My birth father was only 24 when I was born, and my birth mother was only 23 when I was born. I believe they're still living in southern Korea, in Jeonju, I believe. They're actually married now. So that was very interesting too. She said, "Hey, by the way, they're married." That's very interesting. Um, what else? A lot of information. It's kind of convoluted here. Sorry. Um, they were not married, as is the case for many biological parents, biological mothers, like had to give their children up for adoption or decide to do that because of the stigma of unwed mothers in Korea. So my birth family, my birth parents were not married when I was born. They had my brother. He's my biological brother. He was born 3 years before me, so he would be about 27 now. And evidently they were, my biological father was serving in the Korean Army around the time that I was born, I believe. Yeah. All Korean men have to serve in the Korean Army 2 years. So, let's see what else. Evidently, my birth mother's, her parents did not really approve of my birth father. Go figure. So evidently they were just raising my birth brother, not really doing anything legal per se. They weren't married. So, and it's also interesting for many parents, Korean parents that gave their children up for adoption. Many of them had to say, "Hey, we're not married," in order to be able to relinquish their child for adoption, even if they were married. That wasn't my case, but that is the case for many other Korean adoptees. So what else? I also found out that back in the fall of 2008 that my birth mother had not ever told my biological brother about me. I thought that was kind of funny because I guess, I don't know what the circumstances were for her, but I guess maybe um, my brother was not really around her when she was pregnant with me. I was like, well, don't you think a 3-year-old would be like, "Hey, why is my mom's stomach bigger?" Nah. But maybe he wasn't around her when she was pregnant with me. So when I found my family in 2008, she had still not told my brother about me. Dot dot dot. And excuse me. The last time I was in touch with my Korean adoption agency was back in May of this year, 2011, to ask the social worker there to be like, "Hey, I'm planning to come back to Korea to teach for a while. Can you let my biological mother know this?" So it's cool. Social worker, called my birth mother and said, "Hey, Sheena is planning to come back from Korea," and I asked the social worker to ask my mother to let her know that I wanted to meet her in the hopes that she would also want to meet me. So I found out back then in May that my mother still had not told my brother about me. So I'm hoping that she will obviously tell him about me, to talk to to address other Korean adoptees, and also specifically to address other couples that are thinking about adopting. Um, let's see, sorry. Yeah, sorry for the pause there. But yeah, as I've gotten older, I've tried to, or just gotten better at, putting myself in my birth mother's shoes and my birth father's shoes, and saying, yeah, yeah. Obviously there are many questions I still have. Um, for a while there, after I got back from Korea, I thought, okay, I can let my adoption kind of rest, quote unquote. I thought I was in a good place with it. When I came back from Korea, I was definitely feeling very glad that I had had the experience in Korea and had gotten to experience Korean culture. And I was also very glad that I had been, raised in America. I'm glad for the diversity in America. I'm glad for um, just the attitude that I've been able to have as a result of growing up in the United States. But as I got older, as the years passed, as 2007, 2008, I said, oh, why don't I just go ahead and initiate the search? Because evidently they had my birth mother's, I'm not sure if this is correct, national ID number. So, and, to my understanding, I definitely felt as though my records were correct. There was a lot of information because I was adopted in the later 80s. There was a lot of information, so I thought it was a pretty good chance that I would be able to locate my birth family. and that was the case. So, I mean, obviously, um, let's see. Obviously, I still have, many questions. Um, People say, don't you? There's no guarantee, obviously, of being able to build a relationship after you meet your birth family. But and so, I'm trying to keep my expectations in check. Um, my hopes would be to be able to build a relationship, but at the same time, it's all those things. It's all those, the 24 years that have gone by. Like I said before, as I've gotten older now that I'm 24, I've been able to put myself in my mother's frame of mind. I think it's so amazing for me to think that by the time she was my age, she already had 2 children. That's just so. I'm on the totally other end of the spectrum on that. I think it's very just so interesting. But yeah, obviously you had the language barrier and just the time that you can't make up, the time that, um, just the time that's passed. Obviously the language barrier and just, there's so many questions I want to know. I'm hoping they were able to become better educated now. I'm hoping that they're not, their financial situation's better. When they put me up for adoption, evidently they were not very well educated, maybe a high school, middle school education. So I'm just hoping that their life has been better now and they're healthy. And what else? Yeah, I think a lot of other Korean adoptees or just adoptees in general that want to meet their birth families. I think for me, I think, hey, if I had the opportunity, why don't I go ahead and do it? I think it would be a wasted, squandered opportunity if I did not do it. Um, and obviously to let my birth family know that I'm okay and that, um, to let them know I've grown up well and that I'm, um, a lot of people when I was younger, maybe my friends that I had, I told their parents that I was adopted, they may have told me, oh, do you feel lucky to be adopted? And I say, oh, but I don't know if lucky is the right word for it. Um, but I would definitely want to tell my family that I'm, you know, that I don't know, maybe she shouldn't really have regrets, or I hope she doesn't feel ashamed of having given me up. Maybe I'm sure that's definitely a feeling she probably has had or still does have. But to let her know that I'm grateful and that I'm, um, definitely grateful that I've been able to grow up in America and have the opportunities that I've had. To move away from talking about my own story specifically, I went to college to pursue social work, specifically to work in international adoption. Dot dot dot. So yeah, it's that story that about how, not story, but just that metaphor that if you take a drop of salt water and you put it in fresh water, you might not be able to see it, but when you taste it, it's salty. It permeates everything. So I think that's a good metaphor for how my adoption has. I mean, maybe it's not the bane of my existence or whatever, but I mean, it certainly has permeated my whole life and it's colored my outlook on life, and thus my choice to try and pursue international adoption as my work. I guess I would still want to, hopefully, maybe one day, still work in post adoption. Um, to move on to address people that are thinking about international adoption in general, transracial adoption. Again, like I said before, every adoptee will have a different opinion, or depending on where they are in their adoption continuum, just depending on who they are in general. And this is only my opinion. And I think some adoptees, some Korean adoptees specifically, are majority quote unquote against adoption, transracial adoption, and I can understand that too because that's part of wanting to go back to Korea is to learn about the culture that you didn't choose to give up. I mean, no child is necessarily asked to be born, so there's that. But to address the people that are considering adoption, so I see both sides of the story. Um, I think that people that say, oh, maybe not talking about abortion specifically, but people that say adoption is the loving option, quote unquote. I mean, yes, that is the case too, but you have to bear in mind that I think a lot of people think, oh, just give your child up for adoption. Yeah, just do that. You can go on with it. But I mean, that may be one part of the solution, but I think it's a dual solution because by giving your child up for adoption, you also kind of create another problem, quote unquote. The mother has to deal with her loss of her child all the rest of her life, and then that obviously colors her child's life, obviously, that she gave up for adoption. So there's that. Also, to address the issue of transracial adoption, yeah, there are people that are against it, quote unquote, and like I said, I know that there are definitely issues that will come up, but I still, for the main part, I still hold that that every child, no matter what, is entitled to, and every child deserves to have opportunities such as that I have had, and every child obviously deserves to have love and to know, yeah, to have a loving family. Every child, that's why I wanted to adoption. Every child deserves to have a loving home, a forever home. Let's see. Yeah, okay. Going back to this video is getting long again, sorry, but I will talk about my internship a little bit and then finish up the video. I majored in social work. I got my BA in social work. I had to do a 1-year internship, field practice, practicum. So luckily I was able to do that at an adoption agency. I'm not going to name the agency because of confidentiality, obviously, but it's a pretty big adoption agency. They have offices, branches throughout the United States. They do both. It's mostly known as an adoption agency, but they do other social services. Mine was a pretty small office. They did both domestic and international adoption, and so I was able to do my internship in international adoption. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's the confidentiality and boundaries and everything, and I did not necessarily tell the families that I was adopted, but I think if I were to have any advice, quote unquote, or anything to tell people that are considering adopting, I would say in a nutshell, to address the fact that you're trying to adopt, for one thing, I would just say it's easy to get caught up in the process of adopting, especially when it's international. The whole process can be very lengthy. It can be ups and downs. The news that you might get can change overnight. It can be a very roller coaster ride to adopt, especially internationally. But I would say, yeah, I mean, while your focus is on that, don't lose your focus on what will happen when you have your child. It's like your focus is so much on getting the child, but also make sure you're trying to educate yourself about what will happen once I have the child, what will happen when my child grows up. Yeah, I think it can only be to your benefit and to your child's benefit to educate yourself on, transracial adoption, identity issues. Also, one major thing that I wish my parents would have either, I don't know, quote unquote, done for me when I was younger was to learn the Korean language. I think that's one big thing. I would definitely encourage other parents that adopt, couples that adopt, to teach their, obviously in addition to being, I don't know, culturally aware and providing ways for their adopted child to stay in touch with their heritage, roots, whatnot. I would definitely say for adopted parents to teach their children Korean, if Korean. Korean language, I think it's a big link to being able to relate to the culture. Obviously, other adoptees can relate to this in a big way, Korean adoptees. I mean, not being able to speak the language, that's a big barrier. I think it would just be good in that regard to know the language and able to, really know Korean culture, and also just to be beneficial. I think, nowadays it's very beneficial in general to be bilingual, trilingual. I would love to have been able to been trilingual, English, Korean, now Spanish. I think it's just a good. Would be beneficial for adopted parents to teach their child or to help their child learn their native language, just to be just to be, more secular, just to help the child be more worldly. So, let's see. I'm sure there are other things that I want to add later, but we are already at a half an hour long in the video, sorry. Yes, I am planning quickly sum it up here, shut up here, sorry. I will let you all know when I finalize my plans to go back to Korea. I am still trying to firm up my contract, deciding between two schools. I'm waiting on a yes from the one particular school I'm wanting it to work for in Seoul. And obviously I will let you all know when that is confirmed, and also I'll certainly let you know about my experience meeting my birth family and how I feel going into that, etc., etc. So, thank you guys. Thanks a lot for watching. Hope my information can help you all. Adopted parents out there, get in touch with me. People, other Korean adoptees, adoptees in general, people thinking about adopting, leave comments. My dog again, sorry. Leave comments, get in touch with me, send me a message. Thank you.